Hey there, my name is Sonia, and welcome back to the Emerge Stronger podcast. Today, I want to talk to you about something that we all have dealt with, or maybe we're currently dealing with it, and it's about emotional triggers. It's those moments where somebody has said something or have done something, and your heart races or your stomach turns, and you're suddenly reacting because you've been triggered and you don't even know why. And so I want to take a few minutes just to unpack what these triggers really are, where they come from, and how we can manage them in a healthier way. Okay, so let's first talk about what a trigger is. And a trigger is something that you have responded to or reacted to. And it's something that just kind of touches something unhealthy or unhealed within yourself. And so I'm reading this fabulous book called The Next Conversation by Jefferson Fisher. Been diving into this book, and one of those topics that he teaches is like dealing with these triggers. Jefferson describes these triggers not as a problem, but as a teaching tool. So it's revealing something within us that needs care and attention. And so rather than beating yourself up about being triggered, be curious about why you've been triggered. And sometimes these triggers can take us from like 0 to 100. And we need to make sure that we're working on managing the triggers so we're not ignited and we're really just sitting in the moment, asking ourselves and just being self-aware and recognizing, why am I triggered? Okay, so let's talk about where these triggers come from. Sometimes it's an unresolved past experience, something that is an old pain, an old wound, and it's just sitting under the surface. So it could be a tone of voice or a look or a certain phrase that just takes you back there. For me, it's the tone. So, and I really do think it comes from my childhood. When I was younger, I remember my dad looking at me in a certain way. My dad was, I would say, kind of a very serious man just growing up. And I remember he would just look at me in a very serious way, and I would all of a sudden just felt like I wanted to cry, like I've done something wrong. I didn't do anything. That's just the way that he looked. Or it could have been a tone that he used with me. And mind you, this is like under the age of 10. And so he would have this tone, and that I was so sensitive that I felt as though, oh no, dad's mad at me. I did something wrong. And so even to this day, if there's a certain look or a certain tone, I do get triggered by that. No matter who it is, because it takes me back to, oh gosh, I've done something wrong, even though I haven't. But that's just one of my number one triggers. So it also, could be like our core beliefs and values. So you could get triggered because somebody has challenged what you believe in, whether it's your parenting or your faith or your work ethic. It can feel very personal, even though it's not meant to be. And so you have to ask yourself, am I triggered, and am I taking this personal when it doesn't need to be personal? And then sometimes it's also a perceived threat to our identity. And so it's like how we see ourselves or how somebody else sees us. So if you see yourself as competent and somebody questions your decisions, that may trigger you and you may become defensive. Okay, so now let's talk about how we manage these triggers. Number one, it starts with self-awareness. It's so important to notice the patterns. Is this a pattern where you're easily set off because somebody has said something or they have some sort of tone? What is happening within your body? Do you feel yourself getting hot? Does your stomach turn? Does your heart race? And so it's important to just be very self-aware. The next thing is you want to practice some breath work. And so when you're triggered, you might go into this fight or flight mode. And so taking some deep breaths and just really sitting in this, why am I triggered? And asking yourself these questions can really help you just kind of come back to yourself and maybe respond to the person if they've said something in a much calmer way rather than reacting in a defensive manner. It's really important that you're pausing before you say anything. And sometimes when you're triggered and you want to immediately be defensive, pausing is really hard because you need to immediately say what's on your mind. But it also just gives you a chance to, like I said, sit in it and really think about how you are going to respond to the person. Okay. So another way to manage these triggers is ask yourself a question. What else is true in this moment? Maybe that comment that that person said didn't come out the way that it sounded. Maybe it came out as an attack, but again, that's not how that person meant it. And so really just sit with that and ask yourself, is this an attack? Am I taking it personal? Maybe I need to reframe this in a different way. Maybe I need to respond with a question. And then lastly, another thing to help you manage your triggers is just seeking support. And so working with one of our coaches or, your therapist and really get to the root of why does this trigger me so deeply? I can share one other thing with you. When we were talking in our group support call recently about this topic, songs, music, a certain artist can really be triggering to somebody that has maybe been in a relationship crisis and maybe they're going through a divorce and they hear a song on the radio and they're like, nope, turn it off. I can't hear that. That's okay. If you're feeling as though too soon, can't listen to that kind of music, can't listen to that artist, that's being self-aware, understanding that that triggers you and that you need to turn it off. I will say, though, I think over time, it's important to work through that because here's the thing. If you're in a grocery store or in a retail store and that song comes on over the speakers, you can't turn that off. And you might not be in a position to just walk out of the store. And so you're going to have to figure out how to manage those triggers, again, with breath work, with self-awareness, really just talking to yourself, taking some deep breaths. It's okay. I'm going to be okay. This song triggers me. I'm well aware that it triggers me. And slowly just start to move on from there. I understand that it's easier said than done in the moment. However, you will have to start figuring out how to manage those triggers when they happen because it's not as easy as just turning the radio off. All right. Last step, I want to talk to you about a framework that when we were in our support call, we came up with on a simple tool to really help you process these triggers when they show up. It's called the H.E.A.L framework. All right, acronym H.E.A.L, H-E-A.L. H, honor the trigger. Acknowledge what you're feeling without judgment. Say to yourself, this feeling is real and it's pointing me to something deeper. That's H. E, you're going to explore the root of the trigger. Ask yourself, when have I felt this way before? And what's the story beneath the surface? That's E. A, align with the truth. Challenge the false narratives and remind yourself, I am not my past. I'm safe and I'm growing. That's A. L, learn and let go. Every trigger is an invitation to grow. Ask, what can I carry forward from this? And what can I leave behind? I think that this is such a good framework. And in the show notes, I'm going to put a link to where you can download this H.E.A.L framework. You can post it on your bathroom mirror, your refrigerator, wherever it is that you need to post this. But here's the thing that I want to leave you with. I want you to think about when I'm triggered, is it keeping me stuck? Or how can I find a way to continue to grow? You don't want to stay stuck. You don't want to be so triggered every single time you hear something or a tone or somebody says something. You want to be able to grow from it. Being triggered doesn't mean that you're weak. You are human. We all get triggered. And every time that you choose awareness over reaction, you're healing, you're growing, and you're emerging stronger. If this resonates with you, I'd love for you to share this episode and reach out to us to continue the conversation. As always, thank you for being here, and we'll see you next week.